All right. That was kind of fun. How many of you are totally against pineapple on pizza? Wow. I actually really like it. It's pretty good. If you go to Greeks and get their Hawaiian pizza, it's made with like it seems like they use their normal pizza sauce, but add a little bit of like barbecue with it. So it's like sweet, but not like over the top sweet, like normal barbecue chicken pizza. Anyway, it's so good. You have to try it. Don't knock it till you try it at Greeks anyway. All right. How many of you would say you're super competitive? Okay? Like, you will, like, punch someone out to win. Competitive. Like, how many of you play, like, family games, and you were, like, screaming at people across the table because you will win? Have you guys ever played the game called Pit? It's like you're trying to barter the whole time, and by the time time runs out or somebody else wins, you don't want to be stuck with certain cards. So everyone's just, like, yelling at each other across I always lose that game. But that's a pretty intense one where the competitiveness of people really comes out. But all right, so let me ask you this then. Kind of like the bumper video there. How many of you have favorites that you are like you're die hard, like you will fight somebody to prove that your favorites are the best things? Okay, like how many of you like we talked about root beer? Okay, a second ago. How many of you you would choose root beer over cream soda every time? No. How many of you are normal, good, functioning human beings with actual taste buds that would choose cream soda over root beer every time? Yes. Cream soda is really? No, not the red cream soda. That's like I mean, it's okay, but like real cream soda is where it's at, in my opinion. See, yeah, Big Red's not my favorite, but it's an option. Okay, I'll tell you. How many of you you would choose always to have Bowser over like Toad in Mario Kart? Bowser's slower, but I always choose him every time. Like, anyway. Yeah, this is true. Okay, how many of you you love good Instagram reel, but you're always going to stick with TikTok? Anybody? You don't do either? Okay, well, good for you. I went through a phase where I minimized my phone a ton. Actually, this is my home screen. You guys want to see my home screen? I minimize my phone dramatically. I have to swipe over if I want, like I've got a whole thing for socials. TikTok's not on there because I simplified. Church, finance, games, food. I got Chick-fil-A and Taco Bell on there. Creative stuff, media. So like, I have all that, but I got to swipe over if I want to get to. Only my essentials are right there on my main screen that I use every day. So that way I don't open my phone and get distracted by something I should. Anyway, all that to say, I don't have TikTok anymore. So, and for other reasons, but that's one of them. So, we all have things that we would rather have take first place in our lives, right? How many of you, just by show of hands, because I was going to ask this anyway, Taco Bell versus Chick-fil-A? Who says Taco Bell? Because I heard a lot of people say Taco Bell. How many would say Chick-fil-A? Okay. How many of you, okay, how about this? If you were pitting Popeyes versus Chick-fil-A, how many would still say Chick-fil-A? Okay. All right, we can all be friends. Unless you didn't raise your hand, then you have to leave. But no, I'm just kidding. All right. In all seriousness, though, we're going to play another little Would You Rather game real quick, just to kind of demonstrate this a little bit. How many of you would rather, win the championship or be awarded best player of the game? So if those are your two options, would you rather win the championship, like as a team, or be the best player on the team? So how about this? Raise your left hand if you would rather be awarded the best player on the team, and raise your right hand if you would rather win the championship. You have to choose one. Okay? How many of you, left hand, would rather win an Olympic gold medal as a team or the silver medal as an individual athlete with your right hand? So, gold medal as a team, silver medal individually. Okay. How about this one? Here's another way to ask it. How many of you would rather start in a game but lose, or be benched the entire game but win? I have lots of experience with this growing up. I started every game and lost almost every one. Small school. All right. So, okay. How about if I ask it this way? How many of you would rather be the best player on a losing team, or, I wasn't even the best, but whatever, or be the backup player on the best team? All right. So we all have a different definition of first place then, is what I'm gathering, right? Some of you are more think on the individual level. Some of you are more team players and think in that way as what first place is more valuable to you. That's fine. Have you ever noticed that when you're for one thing, it usually means you're against something else? Like a lot of the questions we asked earlier, there were strong opinions either way. Like if you are for the Colts, then that means you are against Bengals. Everybody else, right? Everybody has to be against the Cowboys, though, as long as we can agree on that. I'm just kidding. I really don't care. I just say that because that's a polarizing one. How many of you like you get this, right? Like if you're for something, it feels like you have to be against something else, right? Which is kind of true, but we kind of accentuate, if that's a word, like that extreme in our culture. Like it's black or white. You're against this and you're for this. It's you got to pick one, and you can't be for something without being against something else, right? How many of you would say you're Xbox people versus PlayStation people? Okay, strong opinions again. All right. But it feels like, how many of you feel like you got to be for one and against the other? Like you got to choose. Back in the day, you had to have Xbox if you want to play Halo. Is that still the case, by the way? I don't really play Halo. Okay, so here's, if we're going to kind of take this mentality to like a church context, how many of you've recognized or you've noticed that the church or Christianity seems to be against a lot of things? Okay? How many things is Christianity for? Let me ask it this way. Does it feel like Christianity is more for things or against things? Against? You say for. How many, raise your hand if you say Christianity seems to be known for what it's for, more than what it's against. How many of you would say Christianity is known more for what it's against than what it is for? Okay, we're split pretty even there, okay. So what we want to do in this series is hopefully focus our attention more on what matters, what's important, what is Christianity for, more than what it's against. Because while there are like obvious truths that you have to be for and against when it comes to our faith and things that we believe, oftentimes we put a much stronger emphasis on the things that we're against than on the things that we're for. And I believe that if we focus more strongly on the things that we're for, then the things that we're against will start to take care of themselves. Does that make sense? Like if we get what we're for down solid, correct, then the things that we're against, those kind of, we don't really have to be as vocal about those things because what we're for just kind of makes those things get in line. Does that make sense? And so I feel like oftentimes, because we tend to think in extremes, we tend to speak out more often what we're against than what we're for. And I understand the reason for this. Honestly, as a teacher, I understand the reasoning behind this because we have to draw lines in the sand from time to time and say, hey, like, this is a big thing. We have to be on this side of it rather than this side. And there's a place for that. But oftentimes, and I don't know if it's because of our personalities or just because, like, we often remember the negatives more than the positives, but I feel like the way we talk about things a lot, it's very easy to make people feel like they are our enemies because we talk about what we're against rather than talking about what we're for over that. So what really should take first place when it comes to our faith? How do we know what's really first place when it comes to the things that we're supposed, all the do's and the don'ts, all the things that we're supposed to be for versus the things that we're against? How do we know what's most important in Christianity? Is that a valid question? If we're going to narrow down on the things that we should be for, what should those things be? What should first place be when it comes to our faith? So that's really what we're going to discuss in the series, and we're going to open that up today for the first time in this 4-week series. So about 2,000 years ago, there was one of Jesus' disciples named Matthew. Now, who knows a little fun fact or something about Matthew? It's your dad's name, yes. How about the Matthew from 2,000 years ago? Yeah. He was a tax collector. He stole money, most likely, from the taxes that he collected. He was what? A germaphobe? That's some creative liberties from The Chosen, but maybe. Okay? He was rich because he was a tax collector compared to his other Jews, yeah? He was a disciple, yes. He was what? He was really greedy, most likely, yeah, because he was a tax collector. That's a different one. That's Zacchaeus. Yeah. But yeah, that's good. So Matthew, he was this tax collector, which means like you betrayed your own people because you left your brotherhood, the Jews, to go serve the empire, the enemy, and collect taxes on behalf of Rome. So the Jews didn't like Matthew, even though he was a Jew. It's like he was a traitor, turned his back on his own kind. But Jesus chose to call him to follow him anyway. And it radically changed his life. And Matthew ends up writing down a lot of the things that he experienced while traveling with Jesus, while being his disciple over the course of 3.5 years. And so he records this happened one day. One of the religious leaders came and asked Jesus an important question. And they said, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" In other words, what takes first place? What should we consider is most important? And then Jesus responds by saying this: "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." He says all the law and the prophets hang on these two commands. So if anything were to take first place, it should be this. Now, what we should know is that the religious leaders asking Jesus this question were not asking this out of good faith. They were asking this to trip him because there were like 613 laws in the law of Moses, in the Old Testament, that they were supposed to follow. And it was a trick question because you're not supposed to break any of those. And so by asking Jesus what's most important, they're hoping to trip him up. But Jesus is basically saying, no, if you love God, love others like you love yourself, then that takes care of all the other things fall under that umbrella. Kind of like I said earlier, like if we focus really hard on what we're for, then all the things that we're against will kind of figure themselves out, right? And Jesus is saying basically the same thing. If you love God and love others as yourself, everything else pretty much falls under that. Don't steal. Why? Because that's not loving others. Oh, okay. Well, then you kind of go, don't lie. Don't all these other things. Remember the Sabbath. All those things fall under the big umbrella of love God, love others like yourself. And if we do those things well, then the other things will kind of start to take care of themselves. So ultimately, if we were to summarize it, it's love God, love people, and love you. Does that make sense? Those three things basically should take first place when it comes to our faith. That's the first and the greatest command. And oftentimes, when we talk about Christianity or we talk about the things that we should be for or against, we think of other things. We think of things that are, yes, important, but not as important as this. And oftentimes, we replace loving God and loving people, and loving ourselves, with things like, do this, don't do this. Right? Christians do this, non-Christians do that. And we automatically pit people against each other. But if you think about the first command, the greatest command, as loving, whether it's God, people, or yourself, there's not any discrimination there. There's not any put other people down there. There's not any make people your enemy there. Does that make sense? Because if you are loving God, others, and yourself, then even the way that you have to rebuke sin happens in a loving way. At least it should. And so all the other things kind of take care of themselves once we get this first and greatest command down right. So whether you consider yourself to be a follower of Jesus or not, whether you've come to church your whole life, whether this is the first time you're really hearing about these ideas or not, wherever you're at in your journey, the reality is that God loves you. And so basically by us loving others and loving God and loving ourselves, we're following in suit what God has first shown us. In fact, Jesus says this to his disciples at one point, love others the way I have loved you. And the way that God loves us, it should be the example for us in how we love others. So how do we love God? First, if we're going to love God, we got to start by spending time with him, right? We got to spend time in his word, maybe spend some time, listen to some worship music once in a while. Let's spend some time in prayer. Spend time in his word, discovering who he is and what he says about you. And if you do that, then that's a way that you can show that you are loving God. In other words, you're putting him as your first priority. You're allowing him to influence your thoughts before TikTok, before anything else, before distractions, before what you want to do. Love God. When you spend time with God, you'll learn something. You'll experience him in a new way, and hopefully that will result in you loving him more than you did before, because we tend to love what we spend time doing. And even how many of you started doing something one time that you didn't really love at first, but you grew to love it? It's because we love what we spend our time doing most often. And so if we choose to spend our time loving God, it will create a cycle where we love God even more. Secondly, love others. What's one way to do that? Well, Jesus showed us by serving, right? He washed his disciples' feet. He healed people. He went out of his way to serve other people. And so, serve other people. Do something unexpected. Do something that is just kind to others. Love people. And lastly, love yourself. What do I mean by that? Choose to listen to the truths that God has said about you. Oftentimes, we believe lies. We believe lies that hold us back. We believe lies that leave us in shame. But love yourself the way that God has loved you. You know, when he says to love your neighbor as yourself, it's really hard to love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. In other words, you have to take care of yourself. You have to treat yourself like you are worthy and you are honorable before you can treat others as if they are worthy and honorable. And so, love God, love people, and love you. If we do those things, that's what should take first place in our faith journey. Pretty simple to understand, but often difficult to live out. And so we're going to actually dive into this a little bit deeper over the next 3 weeks. I hope you can come back and join in on that. But as you get ready to go to your small groups, how are you doing when it comes to these things? How are you doing when it comes to loving God, people, and yourself? Maybe you're really good at one of those and bad at the other two. Maybe you're good at a couple of those and kind of need to work on one of the others. But where are you at? And have some self-reflective thought on that as we get ready to go to our small groups. I'm going to pray, and then we'll be done for the day. I hope to see you back tonight at 4 o'clock. It's going to be a lot of fun. So invite some friends if you think of it. Let me pray.